Every morning the world starts quietly, one soft light at a time. Homes flicker awake, shops open. People take those first small steps into a brand new day. And in all of that ordinary movement, there's something kind of extraordinary. A moment worth noticing, a spark you feel before you even name it. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's small, but kindness shows up right on time. And every morning we choose to show up with you so we can look for that spark together.
Good morning. I'm Matt Roof, the Uncommon Kindness Guy, and this is Kindness Rising. Let's rise together.
Good morning, and good morning, friends. Today we are going to be talking about leadership. Leadership. Not the kind that shows up on campaign posters or policy documents, though. We're talking about leadership, political leadership as volume, tempo, and time horizon. Good morning, Roseanne Roof, mother. Welcome in. Everyone else who's there, welcome to Kindness Rising. We're getting up today and maybe asking this question: what kind of leadership does our future actually need? Mike Sullivan, appreciate you joining. I'm sure you will have something to say here today. You all know we do not really get into politics too deeply, but certainly can't ignore what's going on in the world, and been thinking about and want to talk about leadership, the way we lead, the way people lead, and what it means not to judge based on political ideology or policy decisions, but about the vibe of the leader, the volume, the tempo, and the time horizons that leaders need to think about as we move forward. I'm going to bring up a couple of examples today, examples from history, not present time, but we're going to explore the difference between bombastic leadership and quiet leadership. Some leaders lead quietly and some lead loudly. Some lead slow and some lead fast. And today, it seems that the loud and the strong, and it's easy to assume because of today, the way things are today, that loud equals strong and that quiet equals weak because of the noise, the speed, the spectacle of the world that we live in. But what I want to remind us is that bombastic leaders, the loud leaders, they win the moments, but the quiet leaders, they win the decades. Today, we're going to talk about two quiet leaders, names you may be familiar with, and then a bombastic, loud leader as a cautionary tale about winning the moment, but not seeing the future. And then, of course, we're going to connect it back to James Allen and his chapters on Vision and Serenity, and still stay with that same question: what kind of leadership does the future actually need? Welcome to Kindness Rising. I am glad you are all here with us this morning, and get involved in the chat, and let's rise with a little kindness, with a little bit of thought about leadership. Okay. First, I want to talk about vision before volume, and I want to bring back into play here, Sully. As a man thinketh, James Allen. This is his idea that vision is your destiny's architect, and that the dreamers are the saviors of the world. Monday, we talked about Martin Luther King and his dream, and the idea that the dreamers are the saviors of the world. And he has it in a sequence, right? That you have your vision, Then you bring your thoughts, and the consistency of those thoughts is what's going to bring you and develop your character, and your actions will all come from those thoughts. And if those actions come from those thoughts and they're aligned with that vision, then you will achieve the destiny, the dream that saves the world. And quiet leaders, they tend to move in that direction. First, they have the dream and they think deeply about it. They act, but they act strategically and slowly, and they know that it's the long game. And that's how they shape the future. And that's how they shape the future. Absolutely. Bombastic. I call it bombastic. That's my word. Bombastic leaders. They flip that. They flip that around, right? Volume first. Loud, 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 in your face all the time. Volume, volume, volume. Emotion. Emotional charged hooks and taglines, and the ability to mobilize. And then that's how they get to their outcome. So quiet leadership, that's really built on the inside first, and bombastic leadership starts outside, right? Both are powerful. There's obviously powerful examples of both styles working for at least their means, their ends. Daniel Allerson, good morning. Welcome in, buddy. We're talking about leadership. We're talking about the difference between bombastic leaders who lead with volume and emotion, and the quiet leaders who lead with thought and precision and over time. The idea that those types of leaders both exist in the world for a reason, but they're on different clocks. One is about the now, and the other is really more about the future. And I want to talk about a specific example. I was supposed to talk about him yesterday. This is the lead-in for the follow-up, I guess, from yesterday, but with a little different spin on it, with today's spin. But it's the same guy, same inspirational man who didn't win the future through outrage or escalation, at least not in the long run. He won the future for his country through restraint, negotiation, and patience. He spent decades in prison, years in transition, and a lifetime imagining a democracy where democracy never existed. It's Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela mastered the long horizon of politics, right? When I say the long horizon, I mean he understood that real change unfolds on a timeline longer than any election or any moment of outrage. He tried that early on in his days. He tried pressure, protest, and even armed resistance. Those were the short horizon strategies. But the systems that he was fighting against, the system of apartheid, didn't yield. It didn't yield. But then came 27 years. 27 years in prison. Most movements don't survive that, but Mandela used that time to refine his vision, to instead of hardening it into bitterness. And that long horizon, that view, allowed him to re-enter history at the exact moment that negotiation made more sense than retaliation. So during that transition time, there was violence, assassination attempts, all kinds of craziness. Mandela didn't escalate. Instead, he negotiated. He reconciled, and he imagined a country that didn't yet exist. And that's the long horizon, choosing what a nation needs in 10 years, not what anger demands today. And he did that. Over time, with dignity and with grace, but also strength. And then he did probably not craziest, but the most, like, in today's world, couldn't possibly imagine this, right? He came in, he served one term, and then he stepped aside. I think somebody else did that. Someone in our country served one term, stepped aside, because most leaders are building for their next election, but those kinds of leaders like Mandela and like George Washington were building for the next generation. Sully, yeah, Nelson Mandela. Oh, Tracy Chapman. Yeah, I don't remember that, but I can imagine. I can imagine. I don't remember that cultural moment, but I do remember living through the stories and watching the system of oppression fall in the way that it existed then. Absolutely. So James Allen, in his book, he says self-control is strength and calmness is power. And so Mandela, I think he really used those. He used those weapons as of weapons of strategy, self-control, and calmness. And that those moments certainly screamed for reactionary and loud response. And he helped to build a groundswell that turned into that rather than screaming it himself. So he held out and used his quiet strength. I think that's a great story about quiet leadership. Welcome to Kindness Rising. I appreciate it. We're talking today about leadership, about the difference between the loud and in your face type leadership, constant sound bites and changing agendas and wild whiplashes and intentional confusion to some degree, uh, versus a quiet, centered, inner thinking, long view, strategic approach. I'm going to talk about another leader here, another one that maybe not quite as known, at least as Mandela. Maybe you do know Victor Havel. Do we know Victor Havel? Victor Havel, the Czech was known as the Velvet Revolution. I think that's an amazing thing that happened. He was a playwright in a communist state where politics operated like compulsory performance. Everyone knew the script was false. Everyone knew the script was false, but pretending kept that system intact. And Havel's insights at that time were kind of simple but radical. If enough people stop acting within the lie, then the lie collapses. He called it living in truth. It was a long horizon on a moral stance, change not through force, but through refusal, not through escalation, but through imagination. Absolutely. A non-violent, restrained approach that ended decades of authoritarian rule just by saying, I'm no longer going to live in the lie. I'm no longer going to participate in what I know is the truth, or excuse me, what I know is a lie, which is against the truth, right? Uh, Social scientists, I think, call it groupthink. What happens, right? I think we see it happening in real time in certain places, including perhaps our own country, where the pain of speaking up and the consequences that people consider are not as strong as stronger than the value and the benefit. Um, but we can do it quietly. That's because it's in our face, the anger that's in our face all the time. It's hard to stand up against that in a quiet way, but what it requires is long-term patience, the long moral horizon. Change not through force, but through refusal. Absolutely. So Havel did that, right? He did that through through a peaceful democratic transition. Um, we could talk more about the specifics behind Havel and the Velvet Revolution, but basically, it came down to Havel writing that destiny to live in truth before he governed it. Right? He wrote that destiny, and then he lived it quietly, and through peaceful, nonviolent ways. I think that aligns pretty well with what we talk about here on Kindness Rising and our sixth string curiosity, right? Questioning the script, questioning, is this really real what we're living in? What is the purpose? What are people's motives? Authenticity, refusing to participate in that lie. Self-awareness, keeping the ego out of the revolution, right? Seeing something bigger than ourselves. Kindness is dignity as a political method. Growth, envisioning the country beyond its past, and action. The Velvet Revolution, not a single shot fired. Because it started with imagination first. Mandela, Gandhi, Pope Leo, Thomas Merton, Dorothy's Day. I don't know who Dorothy's Day is. Not Doris Day. Doris Day? I don't know. All right. Yes, there are lots and lots of examples. Lots of examples of how imagination and hope and truth can lead to the outcome of our vision. Refusing to perform in the theater. And Havel's most iconic line, his leadership philosophy. I just want to read it. Hope is not the belief that something will turn out well, but that it is worth doing regardless of how it turns out. That's vision before outcome, strategic restraint, moral imagination. Absolutely. And so those are great examples. Meditation, contemplation, and great leadership. You are absolutely right, Roseanne Roof. Thank you very much. I agree. I agree. I want to compare that, though. It's important to compare and contrast because there is value. There is some value, but value that comes with caution in approaching leadership through the lens of winning the moment. Winning the moment. Absolutely. Yeah. So I've got a cautionary tale. Cautionary tale, I guess, right? This one comes from South America. South America, always lots of change happening there and continuing to be lots of change, obviously. And no, I'm not talking about Venezuela. I'm actually talking about Brazil. Brazil, yes. Oh my God, I forgot the guy's first name. Bolsonaro. Anyway, my brain just went completely blank. Uh, Dorothy Day? Who's Dorothy Day, Mom? I don't know who Dorothy Day is. Introduce us. Uh, Bolsonaro rose to power. He won the 2018 Democratic election in Brazil. And he was all about momentum, escalation, adrenaline, keeping moments hot, um, all those things, and that was his appeal. That was his appeal to the people at the time. It was toughness, decisiveness, confrontation, anti-establishment. It worked. It used his bombastic leadership mobilized people through conflict, through volume as persuasion, through certainty as simplicity. And in the short term, it worked. Like I said, he won that. He won that election, um, and had the novelty, had it hot. But then when the real world struck, pandemic, economic volatility, uh, political unrest, Bolsonaro, he struggled to convert attention into alignment and alignment into durability. That's what happens if you're just all about the moment. You lose the coalition. So he lost that election in 2022, not because spectacle stopped working, but because spectacle alone cannot scale into decades. And that's the caution, which is what wins in the moment does not always win in the future. It's the old win the battle, win the war kind of situation, but you can win a war without winning every battle. So that's the compare and the contrast. Quiet leadership that thrives in complexity, and bombastic leadership that thrives in crisis. Quiet leadership that builds coalition, and bombastic leadership that builds mobilization. Quiet leadership requires serenity, and bombastic leadership requires spectacle. Neither is inherently immoral. I don't know. I wrote that, but then I'm like, now I'm wondering. But only one pays the dividends in the future. That's the truth. I'm not going to judge. I am just going to say that I believe in a quiet, steady leadership that starts with vision inside yourself. Inside. It's an inside job, right? It's not about what's going on outside. So, and I don't think it's probably lost on anyone that this thinking that I have today is in response to the press conference yesterday from the White House. Certainly, it's a topic that lots of people will be glad to talk to you about, and I put my spin on it, and my spin is that bombastic leadership and throwing papers around and rambling for 2 hours is not the type of leadership that I think is going to lead us into the future long term. There's a reason for it now today, but it's just not the long term. It's not what's going to build a vision for our country and for the world. And that's a lot going on out there. So that's where we're at. But I wanted to talk about it, like I said, as a form of just thought. Maybe you can bring it into your own life in terms of what type of leader you are. Quiet leadership is not weak. That's an essential tenet of what we talk about here on Kindness Rising. Quiet leadership is not weak. Quiet leadership leads through action. It leads for the long term. Absolutely. By being present on a daily basis, by listening, by leading with empathy and understanding, but also with strategy and understanding where we're trying to lead. And my experience is when you do that outside of yourself, and look, it starts inside, but when you focus outside of yourself, that makes sense. Focus your actions outside, your thoughts inside, and your actions outside. That's when real change starts to happen, and we start to and I know for me, I have started to feel more aligned and more comfortable, and reaching that point of real serenity and understanding within myself, which is the goal. So James Allen, going to keep talking about him. I feel like maybe this is my thing now. He actually gave us the blueprint for that type of quiet leadership. Hold your vision longer than others hold their doubt. That's what we're doing right here on Mornings in the Lab Network. That's what I'm doing on Kindness Rising by showing up every day. Continuing to have that vision, holding it longer than others hold their doubt. Pause before escalating. This is something that I know could help a lot of us. I know it could help, may have helped in recent activities here in the United States. But that pause, that moment when you start to feel, whoa, I'm getting a little too, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, rambunctious. Just pause, just take that moment, take that breath. That's the self-awareness of it. And choose the future over the moment. So many times we act in the moment and it's not aligned with what we want for the future. And it's hard to do. It's hard to pull yourself out of sometimes, pull yourself out of being in that moment, in that feeling. Stay away from the conversation with political views, right? That's not the point of what we're doing here at Kindness Rising. I am not trying to make my political views the point, or your political views the point, anyone's political views the point, but maybe some conversation, some deeper thought about it. Maybe this will trigger some dialogue of your own, healthy dialogue somewhere, and that's what I really want. Absolutely. So remember, Alan says this: the dreamers are the saviors of the world. Mandela dreamed in decades. Havel dreamed in decades. Bolsonaro, he dominated the moments. But moments are loud. Moments are loud. But the futures, those are quiet. Bombastic leadership, it can wake a nation. It absolutely can. But quiet leadership helps it grow. So remember, spectacle, when you're in the spectacle and it's winning the moment, just remember the spectacle ends in the moment, and eventually serenity needs to win, because serenity wins the decades and vision wins the future. That's all I've got for today. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay uncommon and stay kind, of course, is what I was going to say. But I was also going to say, come on back tomorrow morning, 7:30 a.m. Eastern on Kindness Rising. We're here every day. Get on over to Mornings in the Lab with Keith, John, and friends. We'll continue the conversation. All right. I'll see you tomorrow. Again, until then, stay uncommon and stay kind.
Okay, Matt, we got the memo about the Kindness Rising promo, but what exactly are we promising people?
And is there craft services? Hey, I need snacks too.
Gentlemen, focus. Kindness Rising multiplies kindness and helps people get up on the right side of the bed.
So wait, we're not doing another angry headline show.
Exactly. We rise above the negative, divisive noise.
Translation, less rage bait, more high fives for humanity. And this is live, like actually live.
Yep. We go live on YouTube and LinkedIn, 7:30 a.m. Eastern every weekday.
Wait, if it's live, what if I forget my lines?
Then you improvise.
Okay, so our tagline is basically wake up, tune in, and start your day with kindness.
Exactly. Kindness Rising. Good vibes, practical tips, and a reason to get up on the right side of the bed.
You heard the boss. Subscribe now before he makes us do a TikTok dance.
Kindness Rising. Wake up, tune in, and let's make some good noise.